Good evening and welcome to BJC Mitzvah Day, number 161, part 4. Using the Sefer Hachinuch. Mitzvah Day keeps us on its way. We are continuing the mitzvah entitled the Tumah of a Neveilah, and we're really in the home stretch. God willing, we'll be finished by the end of tonight. With regard to the consumption of meat of a kosher animal aside from the prohibition of Neveilah, again, a Neveilah is an animal that was not slaughtered properly, so even if it's technically a kosher chicken, but if it wasn't slaughtered properly, we cannot eat it as Jews. That's called Neveilah. So aside from the prohibition of Neveilah, which applies to an animal that was not properly slaughtered, the Torah prohibits even the meat of an animal that was properly slaughtered if the animal is found to be a treifa. That is, the animal had one of a certain group of fatal defects. See Mitzvah 73. Although both Neveilah and treifa are prohibited for consumption, the laws of Tumah Neveilah, of Tumah's Neveilah, apply only to a Neveilah, not to an animal whose shechita, slaughtering, is valid, but was found to be a treifa. The Chinuch elaborates. In other words, so you take a kosher chicken. So kosher chicken, technically a chicken, right? That's kosher. When I say kosher, meaning it's a animal that we can eat if it's slaughtered properly. So if it just died, we cannot eat it because it was not slaughtered properly. Now, let's say it was slaughtered properly, but it was found to have some type of disease inside it. That's also called treifa. That's also not allowed to be eaten. However, only the neveilah, the animal that died, that would be an animal that is impure. But an animal that was slaughtered properly but found to be a treifa, so you can't eat it, but it does not impart tumah, as we're about to see, impurity. Any animal that dies on its own without shechita, without proper slaughtering, or that did die through shechita, yet some disqualification occurred in the act of slaughtering it, in either case, it is a neveilah. So they're both called neveilah in that case. This is as our sages of blessed memory stated in the Mishnah in Tractate Chulin. This is the general rule. Any animal that becomes disqualified by way of an improper slaughtering, shechita, is considered a neveilah. However, any animal whose shechita was performed correctly, but some other factor caused it to be disqualified, is considered a treifa, not a neveilah, and hence will not transmit tumas neveilah. However, with regard to a non-kosher domestic or wild animal, shechita does not render such animals pure of the impurity of the tumah of neveilah. Therefore, no matter how they die, they are considered neveilah, right? A non-kosher animal, you can't, there's nothing to do about it. You can't slaughter it properly. There's nothing you can do to make it kosher. A chicken could be kosher if it's slaughtered properly and not found to be treifa. But a lion, nothing doing. So it's going to be neveilah no matter what. The Chinuch discusses the point at which the animal is considered deceased. Regardless, tumah will not be transmitted neither by the carcasses of non-kosher animals nor by the carcasses of kosher animals until the animal has fully expired, not while they are still convulsing. These laws and the many remaining details of Tumas Neveilah are set forth in Seder Taharos in scattered mishnahs throughout the Seder. But for the most part, they can be found in Tractate Kalim and Tractate Taharos. Okay, whoa. That was a very interesting mitzvah. Thanks for listening to Sponsor Feature Mitzvah 36. 100 for gold. Have a good night.